The river ran the color of old coffee that evening, thick with rain and broken limbs, rolling hard against the banks like it meant to take the whole valley with it. Eli Boone walked along the waterline with a canvas sack of traps over his shoulder and the slow, stubborn stride of a man who had learned not to hurry even when the world tried to shove him along. Wind came off the Rio Grande cold and wet, needling his cheeks, carrying the smell of mud, willow bark, and a far-off hint of lightning that hadn't fully left the sky. He'd been out since morning, setting steel and bait, checking lines, fixing what the river had chewed. Work kept his hands busy and his head quiet. He preferred it that way. People in town still said his name soft, like grief might hear them and come back around. Out here, the only things that paid attention were crows and the occasional coyote that watched him from the chaparral and decided he wasn't worth the trouble. Eli was tall and broad across the shoulders, the kind of broad that stuck around even after the hard seasons. The hat on his head had seen years of sun and dust. The coat on his back did not mind rain. He'd worn both when he buried Clara and Luke 2 winters prior, small markers on a wind-swept hill above his cabin. Then kept working because stopping felt like drowning. He spoke less after that. Folks called him quiet. Truth was, he'd said everything that mattered at 2 graves and didn't see much sense in repeating it. He crouched to a trap tied off to a willow root, boots squelching into black mud. Empty. Bait washed clean, river laughing. He pulled the jaws free, wiped them on his pant leg, reset. The light was slipping fast, that blue hour when the world holds its breath and coyotes sing. He stood and scanned downstream to the bend, where reeds grew thick against a pile of flood-tossed limbs. Something dark lay tangled there. At first he took it for a snag of bark. The river coughed up plenty of that when the mountains bled. He narrowed his eyes. The shape turned with the current, bumped, settled, turned again. A chill ran up his spine that had nothing to do with wind. Eli dropped the sack, rope thumping the mud, and headed for the bend. The bank fell away to slick stones, the water there pushing strong enough to take a man off his feet if he gave it the chance. Eli didn't give it much. He waded in with a short, hard breath, cold biting straight through denim. The current hit his thighs and shoved, hard. He set his boots wide and leaned into it, working hand over hand along a crooked branch, eyes fixed on the reeds. When he reached the tangle, the shape swung toward him, caught and jerked back. An arm slipped free, small, bare, limp as a rope. Eli's jaw tightened. He drove his left boot against a submerged rock, reached, and caught a wrist cold as river stone. He hauled. It took all of him. The legs he'd earned mending fence, the back that had carried feed and coffins, the old heat under the ribs that woke when something needed doing, and no one else was around to do it. The body came loose from the reeds with a sucking sound. He staggered, regained, dragged backward step by step until river became puddle and puddle became mud. And then he was on his knees with her in his lap, and the sky leaning low. She was young and not, both at once. Face fine-boned, hair black as wet coal braided and half undone, beads clinging to torn dress like river pearls. Her skin, that deep desert bronze, had gone ashy around the lips, which were blue and stubbornly still. There were rope marks dark across her wrists, angry and raw. A widow's thread dangled among the beads at her collar. He noticed all that in a breath, and then stopped noticing anything except the terrible quiet of her chest. "Come on," he said, "because sometimes the first word out is the only prayer a man knows." He set 2 fingers to the side of her neck. Nothing. He pressed an ear to her ribs. The river roared. Her body did not. His hands hesitated for the space of a heartbeat. Old shame, old rules, the memory of Clara's hand in his, small and cooling. He shoved the hesitation down so hard it broke. He laced his fingers, set the heel of his palm to the center of the woman's chest, and began to press. Steady. Strong. He counted under his breath the way an old trail boss counts cattle over a night bridge. Low, patient, unbroken. Mud soaked his knees, and water ran off his hat brim onto her face. He tilted her head, sealed his mouth over hers, breathed life the way he'd only ever breathed air. The taste of river was sharp and metallic. He pulled back, pressed again. Breath. Press. Breath. The world narrowed to the rhythm of his hands, and the will behind them. Stay, he said between compressions, voice a rasp. Stay. Her chest hitched under him. Once. Twice. She coughed, a brutal, tearing cough that brought up a rush of water. Her body convulsed and fought him like a mare coming out of the chute, then sagged and dragged breath into starved lungs. The sound cut through rain scent and river roar and landed like a hammer on the thin wall he kept around his heart. That's it, he said, relief washing through him so hard his hands shook. That's it, girl. She blinked her eyes open, dark, wild, unfocused, and stared straight through him at first, like he was just another shadow the world had thrown. Then she saw him. Fear flashed there, quick and sharp, before the kind of exhaustion set in that no bed cures. She tried to roll. He steadied her with a grip gentle as he could make it. You're safe, he said, and heard how thin the words sounded out loud. He stripped off his coat and tucked it around her, fabric heavy and warm from his body. She grabbed at it with trembling fingers, clutching like folks clutch a Bible when thunder hits close. Eli looked up at the ridgeline. Evening had settled fully. Coyotes had fallen quiet. The river, swollen with rain, rolled on like it didn't give a damn what men did one way or the other. He slid an arm beneath her knees, another behind her shoulders, and stood. She was light in the way of people who've been hungry too long and scared longer. Her head fell against his chest, the braid trailing, beads clicking soft. The climb out of the bottomland took some doing. Mud sucked at his boots and made every step a promise. Wind pushed at his hat. He kept the woman close and his eyes forward, the way you carry anything you love or anything that needs you, which, sometimes, is the same thing. His cabin sat back from the river on a bit of high ground, planked walls silvered by sun and storm. Smoke didn't rise from the chimney. He hadn't kept the fire up, expecting to be late. He shouldered the door with a wet boot, swung inside, and kicked it shut behind him. The room smelled like wood, iron, and the faint, old ghost of coffee that never quite leaves a place. He laid her on his bed, the bed he'd never moved from where Clara had slept. And for a strangled second, something in his chest bucked hard against the idea. He pressed that down too. He wasn't a saint. He was a man trying not to let a stranger die. He crossed to the hearth, knelt, and set kindling under the half-dead coals. Flint to steel, spark to curl. Flame licked cedar and grew until heat pushed back the night. He filled a kettle, set it on the hook, took a clean rag from the peg and dipped it, wrung, brought it to her lips. Easy, he said. Small sips. She reached, hands shaking, and the rag bumped her mouth. She drank and coughed and drank again. Up close, the marks on her wrists told a story he didn't like. Rope, rough and fresh. Her collarbone held bruises in the shape of careless hands. The beads at her dress were broken where fabric had been torn. She watched him from under wet lashes, not trusting the room, the fire, or him. He kept his voice low and his movements slower than slow, the way you move around a skittish horse. "What's your name?" he asked. She said something in a tongue the land knew long before he showed up on it. The words were cracked and soft, but one sound came clear on the end like a bell in a storm. "Ayana," he repeated, to show he'd heard and to fit it into his mouth right. Her gaze flicked from his face to the door and back. Men, she said in English this time, the word rough, the meaning sharp. Her hand twitched toward her wrist. Rope, I see, he said, though what he felt was a tight, hot coil under his ribs. He unfolded a wool blanket and draped it over her, careful to keep his hands where she could see them. Her eyes tracked him like she expected a blow if she looked away. When none came, some small wire inside her loosened the tiniest bit. The kettle grumbled. He poured hot water into a tin cup, let it cool a beat, and offered it. She took it with both hands and sipped, breath catching between swallows. Firelight ran across her face, pulling color back to her lips, pushing the river chill out of the room. Eli sat on the stool with his elbows on his knees and watched the flames throw shadows on plank walls. He kept his rifle propped where it always lived, within easy reach, but tonight it wasn't coyotes or drunk drifters that worried him. Hoofbeats came and went on that ridge above the river. Men who tied a woman's wrists didn't give up because the light changed. The cabin held quiet in the way quiet holds a church after folks leave. Heavy, honest. Ayanna lay still, eyes at half-mast, the blanket up under her chin. Every so often her breath hitched like her body had to remind itself how. He didn't ask more questions. It wasn't time. He understood more than enough. She'd run. The river had tried to keep her, and he had dragged her back. Rain ticked at the window. Wind moved under the door. The fire cut a small, warm circle out of a cold world and set them both inside it. Eli rubbed a hand over his face and found dried mud on his cheekbones. He looked at his palm like it belonged to some other man, and then let it fall to his thigh. "You're safe here," he said again. Better this time, because the room and the heat made it sound truer. She watched his mouth form the words and gave the faintest nod, not of trust exactly, not yet, but of understanding that for tonight at least, the running had stopped. He rose, stoked the fire, and set another log. He found a table knife and cut a strip of cloth from an old shirt, then wrapped it soft around her wrist where the raw skin glared. She flinched at first touch, and then went still, eyes on his hands, breathing steady. He tied the knot with care and moved to the other wrist. "Eli?" he said after a while, tapping his chest with 2 fingers and keeping his voice low. "Eli Boone?" "Ayanna," she whispered again. Steadier now, the name like a promise offered to the room. He nodded once, like the 2 names had just been written in a ledger that mattered. Outside, the river kept on with its dark work. Inside, the fire gave off a clean, resinous heat and the smell of cedar. Eli took the straight-backed chair from beside the table and set it near the bed, then sat with his boots planted and his hat pulled low. He meant to watch the door and the woman both, the way a man watches a line he doesn't intend to let break. Night settled full, thick as wool. The old houseboards popped as the heat got into them. Somewhere out there a lone coyote sang for company, or a meal, hard to tell the difference. Ayanna's breathing lengthened, evened, drifted toward sleep. When it hitched, he said, "You're all right." And she was, at least for that breath. Eli Boone had drug calves out of flash floods, hauled a neighbor's boy from a winter creek, carried his own dead from a bed to a hill. He'd never put air back into a stranger, and felt a piece of himself come back with it. He did not know what the morning would bring. Men with rope were the kind to look again. The river would lower, then rise. Work would be waiting. But he knew one thing in a way he could feel in his bones. He had not let the current have her. He had pulled her into his circle of heat and wood smoke, and whatever it asked of him now, he would meet it. He leaned back, hands loose on his thighs, and let the chair creak. Firelight moved across the ceiling like slow water. The river answered with a low roll, constant as the earth turning. Ayana's eyes slid closed. The room filled with the steady music of two people breathing. One deep and tired, one stubborn and road-worn. And for the first time in a long while, Eli Boone did not feel like the only living man in a dead world. The storm passed, but it left the world quiet in a way that felt heavy. Mist hung low over the river flats, clinging to the reeds like smoke. When morning crept through the cracks of Eli Boone's cabin, it found him still in the chair by the fire, his hat tilted forward, his rifle leaning close. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, the sound of the river rose again. The cold rush of water, the stillness of her body, the gasp when she came back. Now, in the pale light, Ayana stirred beneath the blanket. Her breath rasped against the hush. The coat he'd given her had slipped from one shoulder. She pulled it up quickly, clutching the fabric to her throat. Her eyes opened slow, dark as coffee, scanning the small cabin like it was another trap. Eli straightened, bones cracking from the long night. "Morning," he said, voice rough from silence. She didn't answer, just watched him, unsure. He lifted the kettle from the hook, poured a tin cup of warm water, and set it near her hand. "Drink if you can." Ayana pushed herself up on one elbow. Her fingers trembled, but she took the cup and sipped. The warmth caught in her throat. She coughed softly, eyes watering. Eli sat again, elbows on his knees. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Ayana." He nodded once. "Eli Boone." Her lips formed the word slowly. Eli. It hung there between them like a small thread. Thin, but real. He looked her over in the light. She was older than he'd first thought. Not some young girl torn from her people, but a woman with the face of someone who had known love and loss both. Her hair, long and tangled from the river, fell over her cheek. Beneath the bruises there was a strength that didn't need explaining. "Those men who tied you," he said, keeping his voice even, "they still looking for you?" Ayana's fingers gripped the tin. "Maybe." Her eyes dropped to the blanket. "They killed my husband, burned our camp. I ran." The words came in pieces, but the meaning hit clean. Eli didn't speak for a moment. He reached to the fire, pushed a log into place. Sparks leapt up and swirled in the air. "Then you ran far enough," he said. Ayana's gaze flicked to him. Curious, doubtful. She wasn't sure what kind of man he was yet. The kind who helped because it was right, or the kind who helped because he wanted something in return. She had seen both. Eli stood and went to the shelf by the window. He tore a piece of dried bread and set it on a plate with a strip of jerky. "You need food in you," he said, placing it near her. "Eat slow." She nodded, nibbling at the bread, careful like an animal testing a snare. Outside, wind brushed through cottonwoods. The air smelled of wet earth and cedar smoke. From where he stood, Eli could see the ridge above the valley, slick with dew. Hoofprints cut through the mud near the waterline. Old, but not that old. Maybe riders from the storm night. He didn't like it. He shut the door and bolted it, then glanced back at her. "You rest. I'll check the traps up top. Won't be gone long." Ayana's eyes lifted to him. "You go?" He nodded. "You'll be safe here. Door stays locked. Keep close to the fire." She said nothing, just watched him shoulder his rifle and step out into the mist. The valley was quiet, except for the lazy roll of the river. Eli walked slow, eyes scanning for signs. A bent blade of grass, a print too fresh. He'd been a trapper too long not to notice when something moved wrong in his territory. Half a mile upstream, he found it. Tracks from 2 horses, heading north but stopping once near the bend. The men had been watching the river. He followed the line of tracks until they cut back toward the ridge. Whoever they were, They hadn't crossed into his land yet. He hoped it stayed that way. By the time he returned, the sun had burned through most of the fog. Smoke curled from the chimney. A good sign. When he opened the door, the cabin smelled of warm wood and faint broth. Ayanna had found the pot, coaxed the fire, done what she could with the scraps he'd left. She sat near the hearth, his coat still wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her hair had begun to dry, curling slightly near the ends. She looked up when he entered, her eyes sharper now, though still guarded. "Good," he said, nodding toward the fire. "You kept it lit." She managed the faintest smile. "Fire makes safe." "Yeah," he murmured, setting his rifle by the door. "It does." He poured himself some of the broth, sipped, then glanced over. "You eat?" She nodded. "Little." Eli studied her a moment. The bruises on her neck had begun to fade from blue to yellow. Her hands still shook when she moved, but she carried herself with quiet resolve. "You'll get stronger," he said. "You stay till you can travel." Her eyes met his. "Where?" He didn't have an answer. There wasn't a place in this part of the country that was safe for an Apache widow, or for the man who chose to shelter her. "We'll figure that out," he said. Silence settled again, thick but not uncomfortable. Outside, the wind had picked up. Branches tapped the cabin wall like a soft knock. Ayanna broke it first. "You alone here?" Eli's hand froze halfway to the cup. He set it down slow. "Yeah, been that way a while." She waited. "My wife Clara," he said quietly, eyes on the fire. "Fever took her and our boy Luke 2 winters ago." Ayanna bowed her head. "I'm sorry." "Wasn't anyone's fault," he said. "Just the way of things out here." They sat without talking for a time. The fire snapped and popped, and outside the river kept rolling, steady as breath. Later, when the sun leaned west, Ayanna tried to stand. Eli moved quick, catching her by the arm before she could fall. She froze at his touch, the old fear flashing in her eyes. He eased his grip, steady but gentle. "Easy now," he said. "Floor's cold." She nodded, breath unsteady. "I help," she whispered. "You rest," he said. Her chin lifted a little. "I help." Eli almost smiled. "All right, you stir the fire then. That's enough for now." She crouched beside the hearth, poking the embers with a stick. The orange light climbed her face, painting it in warmth instead of bruises. Eli watched from the table, something tight in his chest easing for the first time in years. Night came again sooner than either expected. The mist rolled back in, and coyotes cried from across the river. Eli barred the door and checked his rifle, then sat back in his chair. Ayanna had curled up near the fire, wrapped in his coat, eyes half-lidded but awake. She looked at him suddenly. "Men come?" "Not tonight," he said. "If they do, I'll hear them first." Her voice trembled. "They find me before, always find." "Not here," he said, calm and certain. "Not while I'm breathing." The words landed heavy. She stared at him a long moment, as if testing whether he meant them. Finally, she pulled the coat tighter and whispered, "Thank you." He tipped his hat lower. "You don't owe me thanks." But inside, the sound of her voice, the simple trust it carried, stirred something deep. The fire burned down to coals, throwing red light across the floorboards. Ayanna's breathing slowed. Eli listened to it, steady and human against the hum of the wind. He thought of Clara, of Luke, of how the cabin had felt colder than death until last night. He didn't call it fate. Cowboys didn't use words like that. But he knew the river hadn't brought her to his shore for nothing. He glanced toward the window, saw the faint shimmer of moonlight on the water. "Tomorrow," he murmured to himself, "I'll ride the ridge. Make sure those riders are gone." Ayanna's lips moved in her sleep, soft and broken, something like a prayer. Eli leaned back, boots planted, rifle close, the sound of the fire steady. Outside, the wild stretched endless and merciless, but inside the small cabin, For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt alive. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. Trouble, maybe, or worse. But tonight, the river's echo no longer belonged to the dead. It belonged to the living. The next morning broke with a brittle kind of cold, the kind that cracks under your boots and makes breath hang in the air like smoke. Eli Boone stepped outside before the sun cleared the ridge, his rifle slung across his shoulder and a restless feeling pressing behind his ribs. The river had dropped some during the night, leaving streaks of brown along the banks where the water had clawed at the earth. Everything looked calm, but calm in these parts was a liar. It never lasted long. He crouched near the fire pit out front, stirring the ashes from last night's cooking. From the open door came the faint sound of metal and wood. Ayanna was moving around inside, cleaning, straightening, doing what she could to turn a stranger's cabin into a place that felt less like a hiding hole and more like somewhere a soul might breathe. She had found his spare shirt, worn and soft, and it hung loose over her frame. Her hair, now brushed out, fell smooth down her back. The bruises on her face had lightened, but her eyes still carried the weight of running. Watchful, never resting too long on any one thing. Eli poured a bit of coffee grounds into the pot and filled it with river water from his tin. He liked the sound of the bubbles when it started to boil. It reminded him that small things still worked the way they were supposed to. Ayanna appeared in the doorway. "You ride today?" she asked, her voice rough but steadier than before. He nodded. "Gotta check the ridge. Make sure we don't have company." She hesitated, looking out toward the horizon. "They come back," she said quietly. "Men like that don't forget." Eli met her gaze. "That's what I'm counting on," he said. By mid-morning, he was in the saddle, the bay horse snorting against the chill. The climb up the ridge was steep and slow, the kind that keeps a man thinking about how easy it would be for trouble to find him out here. The wind carried the smell of smoke. Faint, old, but not natural. He nudged the horse forward. When he reached the top, he saw it. A small camp in the hollow below, 3 horses tied off, one of them lame. The men sat near the fire, hats low, guns within reach. Hank Dobbs, thick-shouldered and mean around the eyes, poked at the embers with a stick. Beside him, Virgil Tate sharpened a knife with the lazy patience of someone who liked what he was doing. The third, Clyde Red, was stretched out on a blanket, hat over his face, boots still on. Eli felt the old tension rise in his spine. He'd seen these kinds before. Mercenaries without a home, following coin or cruelty, whichever came easier. He backed the horse into cover and watched for a while. They weren't just passing through. They were waiting. The kind of waiting that had a name attached. When Hank Dobbs finally spoke, his voice carried easy up the hill. "She ain't got far," he said. "River couldn't have carried her clear to Mexico. Somebody picked her up." Virgil spat into the fire. "If he did, we'll find him too." Clyde let out a dry laugh. "Then what? You gonna thank him?" Hank grinned, showing a tooth that had gone silver. "We'll let him hand her over nice and polite first. Saves everyone a bullet." Eli's jaw tightened. He'd heard enough. He guided his horse down the back side of the ridge, taking the long way home through the trees. His mind worked faster than his body, counting the men, the distance, the hours until nightfall. By the time the cabin came into view, he'd already made up his mind. Ayanna was outside, hanging his old coat on a line near the firewood stack. When she saw his face, the color drained from hers. "They come? They're close," he said, dismounting. 3 of them, camped on the far ridge. She gripped the post beside her. "Dobbs," she whispered, the name tasting like ash. "He leads them," Eli nodded. "That's the one." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them carried the sound of the river, slow and heavy. Finally, he said, "You got to stay inside tonight. Don't open the door, no matter what." "I fought before," she said. "I can—" He cut her off with a shake of his head. Ain't about fighting. It's about living to see another sunrise. Her eyes burned, but she said nothing. She turned and went inside, the door closing behind her with a soft thud that sounded too final for his liking. Eli spent the afternoon readying the cabin. He checked the hinges, stacked the firewood against the outer wall to block the lower windows, laid his rifle and Colt revolver on the table. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the groan of the trees, seemed louder, closer. By dusk, the air had gone still again, that uneasy quiet before something bad. He stood by the doorway, watching the last light fade from the valley. Inside, Ayanna stirred a pot of stew. The smell of beans and salt pork filled the room. She didn't say much, and neither did he. Words didn't do much good when a man was bracing for trouble. When the stew was ready, she poured him a bowl and sat across from him. For a while they ate in silence. "You could go," she said finally, her voice low. "Ride south. No one would blame you." He looked up, the firelight catching the scar that cut across his cheekbone. "That ain't how I'm built." "You don't know what they did," she said, her tone shaking. "What they'll do again." "I've got a fair idea," he said. "Men like that don't change stripes. But I've buried enough to know running don't make a thing right." Ayanna set her bowl down and folded her hands in her lap. "You'll die for me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back, eyes on the fire. "No," he said finally. "I'll live for what's right." That's different. The room fell quiet again. The only sound was the slow boil of the pot and the wind rising outside. Near midnight, the horses came. Eli heard them before he saw them. The soft clop of hooves on packed dirt, the creak of leather, the faint jingle of metal. He motioned for Ayanna to stay low behind the table, then blew out the lamp. 3 shadows stopped at the edge of the yard. A voice called out, smooth and oily. "Howdy there. You got a woman inside? Apache, about yay high?" Eli stepped to the doorway, rifle in hand. "Ain't nobody here but me," the voice laughed. "That so? Mind if we take a look?" "Yeah," Eli said. "I mind plenty." From the dark came the sound of a horse shifting, a rifle being cocked. "Listen, friend," the man said, his tone turning sharp. "She's government property, escaped prisoner. You hand her over, we ride on. You keep her, we burn your damn shack to the ground." Eli's hand tightened on the rifle. "If she was your prisoner, you'd have papers. You got any?" The man laughed again. "Ain't that cute? A trapper wants paperwork?" Eli's voice dropped, steady and cold. "I'll give you till I count 3. Hank Dobbs spat in the dirt. "You don't scare easy, do you?" "1, Eli said. Virgil's horse snorted. "Boss!" "2, Eli said. Clyde shifted in the saddle, muttering. 3. The rifle cracked before the word finished leaving his mouth. The shot tore through the night, splitting bark off the post beside Hank's knee. The horses screamed, bolting sideways. "God damn it!" Hank roared. "You just made a big mistake!" "Don't make me make another," Eli said, his silhouette framed by the doorway, smoke rising from the rifle's muzzle. The riders regrouped, backing off toward the trees. One shouted something Eli didn't catch over the pounding of hooves. Then they were gone, vanished into the dark like ghosts that carried their own thunder. He held still for a long moment, listening. Nothing but the wind and the river again. Inside, Ayanna stood, shaking, her hands white around the edge of the table. "They'll come back," she whispered. "Yeah," he said, setting the rifle down. "I know." She stepped closer, her eyes wide in the firelight. "Why?" He looked at her then, really looked. "Because the world don't have near enough people willing to stand in the way of evil. Tonight, I was one of them." She nodded, tears glinting though she tried to hide them. "Then I'll stand too," she said. Eli didn't argue. He just nodded once, tired and certain. Outside, the coyotes began to sing again, their cries rising into the night like a hymn for the damned. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. but it burned steady. And as the sound of the riders faded into distance, Eli Boone knew something for sure. The storm wasn't over. It had only begun. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of morning that didn't promise anything good. The air outside was still, heavy with smoke that wasn't from Eli Boone's chimney. He rose before the sun, checked the door bolts, and stepped onto the porch. The yard lay quiet, except for the wind carrying the faint smell of burned pine. The riders had camped somewhere nearby last night. He could feel it the way an old wound feels a storm. Inside, Ayanna sat near the hearth, her hands folded tight around the cup he'd given her. She hadn't slept either. Her dark hair hung loose around her face, and the firelight drew soft lines over her skin. When he came back in, she looked up with that same alert stillness she always carried, half trust, half fear. "They'll come again," she said quietly. "I reckon they will," Eli answered, hanging his coat. "But they'll think twice before walking straight into a rifle barrel." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "They have no fear." He met her gaze. "Then I'll just have to give 'em something to fear." He spent the day checking his traps, setting tripwires in the brush, watching the ridge through the glass of his field scope. The sky was clean blue by noon, but it didn't comfort him any. Blue skies never meant safety in this country. They just made it easier to see who was coming for you. Back at the cabin, Ayanna swept the floor, patched a tear in one of his old shirts, and tended the fire. The place looked different now. Less like a fortress, more like a home that had decided to fight back. She moved with a quiet purpose. No longer the frightened woman pulled from the river, but something stronger. When Eli came in, she looked up from the hearth. "You built this alone?" "Every plank," he said. "Took me a full winter." She nodded, tracing the wood grain with her fingertips. "Strong." He smiled faintly. "Had to be. Out here the wind'll tear apart anything half-built." Their eyes met. For a second, there was no fear, no river, no riders, just two people standing in the same storm for different reasons. Later, they sat down to eat what little stew was left. The sun slid behind the mountains, and the room filled with the warm amber of firelight. Eli leaned back in his chair, boots crossed, his rifle propped nearby. Ayanna poured him coffee and sat opposite. "You ever think of leaving this place?" she asked. "Every day," he said. "Then I remember I ain't got nowhere to go." "You do now," she said softly. "You have me." He looked at her for a long moment, unsure if he'd heard her right. The fire popped. The scent of smoke and beans lingered in the air. "I saved you because it was right," he said, voice low. "Didn't expect more than that." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near his. "You didn't just save me, Eli. You gave me back breath and peace. I was dead before the river took me." Her fingers brushed his. He didn't pull away. The room seemed to still, the world narrowing down to the sound of her heartbeat and the crackle of fire. Outside, the wind kicked dust across the yard. The old horse nickered in the pen, restless. Eli rose, walked to the window, scanned the ridge. Nothing yet, but he knew what waited beyond the horizon. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow might be rough." She shook her head. "If they come, I stay with you." He sighed. "You don't owe me that." "I owe myself that," she replied. "No more running." There was steel in her tone now, the kind forged by grief and fire. He recognized it because he'd been made from the same kind. When darkness fell, Eli sat cleaning his rifle by the fire while Ayanna braided her hair. The rhythm of it, his slow, methodical hands and her quiet movements, brought a strange kind of peace. He looked up. "You were married long?" She paused. 5 years. "Good man?" She nodded. "He was kind. He taught me to ride, to hunt. Said the land don't belong to anyone who fears it." Eli smiled faintly. "Sounds like he was right." She met his eyes. "You had a wife, too." "Clara," he said softly. Sweetest soul in Texas. Could make a fire with wet wood and still scold me for muddy boots in the same breath. Ayanna laughed quietly, her first real laugh since the river. It came sudden, fragile, but warm. Eli felt it strike deep, waking something he'd buried under 2 winters of silence. Hours later, when the fire burned low, she moved closer to him. The space between them closed like it had been waiting for that moment since the night he pulled her from the current. "Eli," she said, barely above a whisper. He looked up. "Do you believe God sends people back? Not to live, but to save?" He thought about Clara, about the graves on the hill, about Ayanna's breath filling again under his hands. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe he just sends us where we're needed most." She nodded, eyes glistening in the firelight. "Then maybe that's why I came to your river." Before he could answer, she leaned forward, her lips brushing his. Soft, hesitant, tasting of smoke and coffee. It wasn't the kiss of strangers. It was the kind that came after long silence, when 2 broken hearts finally found something they'd both lost. He didn't move for a moment, afraid to scare it away. Then his hand rose, resting against her jaw. She let out a breath that sounded like relief. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off, a low promise of the storm yet to come. Eli drew back slightly, his thumb brushing her cheek. "We got trouble coming," he said. "I know," she whispered. "But for tonight," he understood. They both needed a moment where the world stopped chasing them. He pulled the blanket around her shoulders, and they sat there beside the fire, neither speaking. Her head found his chest. His arm came around her without thought. She smelled like wood smoke and wild sage. For a man who'd forgotten what it meant to feel human, the weight of her against him felt like mercy. Sometime after midnight, the wind changed. The cabin creaked, the air thickened. Eli rose quietly, moved to the window. Down below, faint orange sparks glimmered in the dark. A campfire. Too close. He cursed under his breath. "They're back!" Ayanna was already on her feet, eyes hard. "Then we fight." He turned, saw the determination in her face, and something in him shifted. She wasn't a survivor anymore. She was a warrior. He loaded his rifle, handed her the revolver. "You ever shoot?" She nodded once. "My husband taught me." "Good," he said. "Keep it steady. Don't shoot unless you have to." They moved around the room in silence, checking weapons, dousing the fire until the cabin fell into shadow. Outside, the horses snorted, uneasy. Eli looked at her one last time, her face lit by the fading glow. "Whatever happens," he said, "you run for the ridge if I fall." She stepped close, shaking her head. "If you fall, I fall. I'm done running." He didn't argue. There was no point. The night outside was darker than pitch, and somewhere beyond the trees, the riders were saddling up. He could hear the metallic clink of buckles, the whisper of voices carried on the wind. Eli cocked the rifle and took a slow breath. Ayanna stood beside him, fearless in the half-light, her hands steady on the revolver. The fire between them was gone now, but another flame burned, quieter, stronger, the kind that no storm could put out. As the first hoofbeats echoed across the valley, Eli looked at her and said, "Stay close." She met his eyes and nodded. "Always." The wind picked up, rattling the shutters, carrying the scent of gun oil and rain. And in that heartbeat before the fight, Eli Boone realized something he hadn't dared to believe in years. He wasn't alone anymore. Outside, the darkness moved. Inside, 2 souls waited, ready. The flame between them flickered once, then steadied, burning bright against the night. The night split open with the first shot. The sound cracked across the valley, sharp as thunder, scattering the owls from the trees. Eli Boone was already on the porch, rifle steady, eyes narrow. He caught a flash of movement near the pines. Hank Dobbs crouched behind his horse, aiming low. Eli fired once. The bullet struck the dirt near Hank's boots, kicking up dust. The man ducked, shouting for the others. Inside, Ayanna moved to the side window, her breath slow, revolver in hand. She wasn't trembling. Not anymore. Every trace of fear had burned out of her the moment she decided to stay. The night burned with gunfire. Muzzle flashes tore holes through the dark. The smell of powder and smoke filled the air. "Stay low!" Eli yelled, firing again. Ayanna's reply came calm, certain. "I'm not leaving." Her voice steadied him more than the rifle in his hands ever could. For nearly an hour, the fight seesawed. Bursts of sound followed by heavy, aching silence. The riders tried to circle wide, coming up the slope behind the cabin. Eli cut them off each time, using the terrain like a second weapon. One shot tore through his sleeve, grazing his arm. He barely noticed. Pain was a luxury he couldn't afford. Ayanna spotted movement through the window. Clyde Red slipping toward the barn. She aimed, waited for the right breath, and fired. The shot rang true. A shout echoed, then faded. Eli turned toward her. "Good eye." She met his look, her face unreadable. "I learned from the best." He almost smiled, but another bullet slammed into the wall beside him, splintering wood. By dawn, the world was gray again. The fight had slowed to silence. Smoke drifted across the yard, and the smell of blood hung heavy with the morning fog. Eli stepped out, rifle ready. The earth was torn with hoofprints, spent shells, and one rider down. The others were gone. He watched the ridge until his eyes ached. They wouldn't be back soon, not after what they'd lost. But men like Hank Dobbs didn't give up forever. Ayanna came to the doorway, the revolver still in her hand. "It's over? For now." Her eyes traced the yard, the blood, the smoke. "You saved me again." He shook his head. "We saved each other." The rest of the morning passed in silence. They buried Clyde Red near the edge of the ridge. No prayers, no words, just dirt and wind. Ayanna placed a single pine branch on the mound. Eli leaned on the shovel. "Ain't much peace in dying like that." She looked at him. "There's no peace in killing either." He nodded slowly. "No, but sometimes it's the only way to keep the living safe." They stood there for a long moment, the sky brightening above them. The world looked clean again, though both of them knew better. That evening, as the sun sank low, Eli repaired the bullet holes in the cabin walls, while Ayanna cooked what was left of the beans. The smell of smoke and salt filled the air. When he finished, he washed his hands and sat across from her at the table. Neither spoke for a while. The firelight danced across the room, soft and gold. Finally, Ayanna said, "You could go. Back to town. Start over." Eli shook his head. "Ain't much left in town for a man like me." She studied him for a long moment. "Then what will you do?" He looked around the small room, the worn table, the patched roof, the woman sitting across from him. "Guess I'll keep fixing what's broke," he said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I'll stay long enough to see that through." He leaned back in his chair, eyes meeting hers. "I'd like that." Later, as dusk turned to dark, they walked down to the riverbank. The water ran calm now, soft and silver in the fading light. Ayanna crouched near the edge, dipping her fingers into the current. "This river," she said quietly, "it took everything from me and gave something back." Eli stood beside her. "Took plenty from me, too." She glanced up. "And what did it give you?" He thought for a long moment. The wind moved through the cottonwoods, carrying the smell of wet soil and cedar. "It gave me a reason to breathe again." She looked back at the river. "Then maybe it's not cursed after all." They stood there together, silent, watching the water roll on toward the horizon. The river no longer sounded like death. It sounded like life, stubborn, wild, unstoppable. As the stars came out, they made their way back to the cabin. Ayanna lit the lamp while Eli poured 2 cups of coffee. The fire burned low, filling the room with soft heat. She turned to him, her eyes steady. "Do you think they'll come again?" "Maybe," he said. Men like that always do, but if they do, we'll be ready. Her voice softened. We? He smiled, tired but certain. Yeah, we. She nodded slowly, as if sealing the word into truth. When the night deepened, she sat by the window, looking out at the ridge. I used to think the world was nothing but loss, she said. But maybe it's not the losing that breaks us. Maybe it's forgetting what's worth saving. Eli looked at her, the lamplight catching her face, her quiet strength. You're what's worth saving, he said. Her lips curved into a smile that carried both sorrow and peace. And you, Eli Boone. You're what I prayed for when I stopped believing in prayers. He didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded, feeling something inside him settle for the first time in years. Outside, the river whispered softly in the dark. As the story of the night wound down, Eli found himself staring at the horizon beyond the open window, at the endless stretch of land that had shaped men and broken them. He thought of Clara, of Luke, of all he had buried, and realized the world had given him one more chance, not to forget, but to heal. He turned to Ayanna. Tomorrow, he said, we'll ride into town, get supplies. Maybe a new start. She smiled, a small, weary smile. Then tomorrow it is. The fire dimmed. The night grew still. The river murmured through the valley like a lullaby older than both of them. Eli Boone leaned back in his chair, the scent of wood smoke thick in the air, and let out a long breath. For the first time, he didn't feel like a ghost haunting his own home. Ayanna crossed the room, set a hand on his shoulder, and whispered, You kept me alive. He looked up at her, eyes gentle. No, ma'am. We kept each other. The next morning would come, as it always did. The riders might return. Storms might rise again. But tonight, they had the river, the fire, and the fragile peace they'd fought for. Outside, the first hint of dawn painted the sky pink and gold. Inside, warmth filled the cabin. Not just from the fire, but from something deeper, something human. And as the light grew, Eli asked quietly, more to the night than to her, if a man's been lost long enough, and the river brings him back, does he ever really belong to the land again? Or does the land belong to him? He didn't expect an answer. Some questions are meant to drift like the current, steady, endless, carrying pieces of every soul that's ever stood on its banks. The river kept moving, carrying their reflections across the dawn, and for the first time in years, Eli Boone smiled.